Looking back, our great Three Pillars event has begun, whether or not we understand it. Will it be a shift of the electromagnetic field due to the quick passage of two visitor stars and a planet? Will it be something that happened suddenly due to the arriving superwave of a quasar nestled in the heart of the Milky Way galaxy? Is a local star about to nova? All we know for sure is expect a few great drum beats. The lights in the east we saw. Now there will be one from the north unleashing hell, and one from the west telling us it's over. Ancient imagery shows the sun blows fire in our direction, so we can expect a great sacrifice of life right here and hope to be set free by mercy and truth. John 8 and Esther 9 are looking dire. Now, the Rothschilds' Third World War may or may not be televised because first the lights are supposed to go out. The scriptures and myths don't say much to people who think scientifically, but since you and I seem to live in a fractally conceived and cyclic universe, whatever the old stories say tends eventually to be true. The myths provide hints if we can figure out which one to look at. For example, if you wanted to understand our Ferris wheel universe of spinning lights of the heavens on both sides of our sun right now, you could look at a creation text studied by the rabbis of Alexandria in 273 BC when they were writing the Torah, an Akkadian tale called the Atrahasis, meaning exceedingly wise. So it has the midwife of the gods, call it the sun, laying out 7 hunks of clay to the left and 7 hunks of clay to the right. And there are 14 birth mothers or celestial bodies here in the neighborhood right now, and creation begins. The stone on the left is Aztec, as with the Sanxingdui bird god next to it. It shows some kind of crazy electromagnetic field thing about to go crazy. The openings in the stone, I think, stand for the current locations of the twins, Saturn and Jupiter, who briefly switch places next month as things light up. The age of Aquarius begins as quickly and violently as Pisces ends, and time goes relative as we lose time to a reversal, and the equinoxes trade places. And from the old symbols, I'm not sure if we lose 3 months or just a week. I'm not sure. You will be amazed by strangers of the 10th ram arriving as the gates to heaven and hell open for business along Jacob's ladder. If you drive a tank, man a ship, or fly a fighter for a living, try to remember that if ET has the technology to get here, they also had the technology to end us at any moment of the past 64,000 years. So don't get hostile until you see the whites of their eyes. On the upper right, you have a phoenix following Horon's appearance, and watch for the eagle now flying above the head of the Aquarian sun. Leo and a red star will quickly join forces. Hercules as a lion-faced eon will rise behind the eagle priest's head. It will be a time of the Lion of Judah, and Ekpirosis will come in with a flood. The Canaanite seal shows this moment as we await. We see the fish of Pisces about to be devoured by the dragon. Next to it is a symbol of life and flood on one side, and on the other, our son speaking the second word of God near the third letter of his name, the Vav in Yahweh, a nail in the cross of our universe, the sign of Jonas, Luke 11:29. You can look at the big guy on the right as Saturn Shamash, and the little guy on the left is our Son of God, scrying the mirror darkly. If you agree that the Son generally does the work of the Father, then you can see Abba, the Spirit God, in that avatar mask or visor. I imagine we each carry one, so as we again put down the gaming helmet and ditch our skin pajamas, we're home. Note blue and red stars lined up at the sun. You can call them archangels. Michael would be the red one, Gabriel the dark Marduk and Tiamat, Adam and Eve, Inanna and Dumuzi, El and Enki, Orion and his scorpion, Yahweh and Aloha, two who are one, flip sides of one entity. Either she's wearing a dollar sign on her back or he's wearing a big S for Superman on his chest. Time won't separate the co-creation. Remains to be seen where in the sky the brightness originates. We've two nominees for the axes about to be revealed. The one that slayed Orion Horus was a beam from the galactic center where converged the arrow of Sagittarius with the stinger of Scorpio. The other being our heliosphere rushing from 7 Pisces toward 69 Leonis. Perhaps both light up in this time of serious energies. Look for a dazzling queen of heaven or bride of Christ, Virgo, sporting a blue halo and extra planets, and her great red firebrand rushing toward us like a comet with holy hell in his claws. Whatever will you call him? Can a judge of Shamash Saturn be a savior? Can a savior be a fellow child of God interposing for us in the wrath? Red Star, Planet X, and Venus will try to save us from Sol. Jupiter Yod will try to shield us from his father. Blue Star will attempt to save us when Sirius erupts. Between now and the vernal equinox, Orion will head north. When he arrives, a beam will strike that will change the world. On the surface, survivors will have instant Stone Age for a while. Below the surface, H.G. Wells' Land of the Eloi, they might have some, I don't know, all sorts of technology from ages past. It would only require a good generator, and the core of the planet might serve perfectly for that purpose. We said this would be a 3-pillar event between Pisces and Capricorn, marked at the beginning by a Saturn moon. On the bottom left, you can see the hidden ones were precisely where they were supposed to be February 1st, like that Ankh at Wadi El Hol holding up a lion's paw in the east like an Eagle Scout. The photo arrived from a group called Nemesis, amateur astronomers tracking the Nibiru system through space. The great drama began without fanfare on Earth, just a little extra wind and power outages. Cold air now rushes in the morning to fill a band of Earth warmed by 3 suns. Expect the breath of God to blow harder during the next 2 months. My wind chimes have never had so much fun. When they died down, it's so quiet out there, the trees hum with thousands of bees enjoying the unseasonal heat. We are headed to a central moment in theology, myth, and science. You can call it global warming if you want to, but sun will toss flares with the visitors, and Earth may get caught in the crossfire. The ancients saw it as Seth fighting Apophis or Yahweh slaying Leviathan, Jupiter making Pegasus throw Orion. Genesis 49 stuff. On the little crisscross of the Mississippians, you can see that Red Star now heads down to the heart of Aquarius, along with Blue Star Rising, also headed to the heart of heaven. And they meet in the middle between the 5th and the 15th of next month, and the Lord speaks his word. What did Jesus say? In Matthew 24 and Mark 13, he said, "Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away." This is what he was talking about. When Yahweh speaks his word the second time, creation begins anew. Apocalypse meets Genesis, and nothing can remain the same. Lots of angels will climb and descend the ladder between heaven and earth. The sign of the ram above Creator's head says, expect it very near the equinox. 40 days after that, expect a new heaven and a new earth as a function of pole shifts. If you're as colorblind as I am, you probably have trouble seeing the visitor stars that stood next to the sun February 1st at the top of the first pillar of our 3-pillar event. Now begins a rotation that will see Saturn fall, then rise to the west, and Jupiter rise, then fall to the east. I believe the way it goes is that Blue Star is rising behind the sun while Red Star falls to a line between us and the sun. And I believe you will see an eclipse out of season in early to mid March. About the time we pass 3 days of darkness, we shall then have great brilliance and a quick reversal, and the Son of Man will be suddenly rising up. It's all about our planet's poles realigning as the stars of creation pass each other, and a sudden appearance of planet X dropping in. I hope NASA will keep the ancient names when they officially rediscover these things that your ancestors seem to have known all about. If you held the eagle priest stone, you could see that tiny open pyramid at the bottom of the face with a dimple inside for the first point of Aries. It's the moment I think of our reversal, when the priest's face suddenly turns up or falls down, and we can see directly an eye of God sporting a beam aimed at the earth. Read St. Ephraim the Syrian on the luminous eye, or Proverbs 20, verse 8. And with the sharp face of the eagle, you can see how some of the ancients must have viewed it as an axe coming to divide us, sorting out who goes where for the afterlife. To some people, the axe and the eagle were two sides of the same god, the goat and the frog, Era and Ishum, El and Enki, Tlaloc and Kukulkan, the lion and the bull, two dragons, Yahweh and his angel called the Word. Everything boils down to a population bottleneck, and the last time creation tried unsuccessfully to slay all the wicked and indoctrinate all the survivors. To others, there were always two camps bent for blood, the vampires versus us. To these people, apocalypse is a sifting of givers and takers. To hear them tell it, it's gods and humans, or man and beasts, or crosses and pitchforks, or Republicans and Democrats. To still others, there are many camps to be respected: Christians, Jews, Gnostics, Buddhists, Jainists, Hindus, and Muslims, each wondering if the other is just a con job, a bunch of race supremacists and ideologue fanatics. The secret, I think, is in the little banner stone. This planet has two basic possibilities. Either these equinoxes of the extremes prevail, where Earth tilts this way 23.5 degrees and then the opposite way with a wet and fiery crisis separating them, or the visitors depart and the new equator tracks with the celestial, and that might be pleasant. I'm quite sure I don't cherish the awful wisdom of our present plan of cataclysm. Were things done the usual American way with high expectations of growth, well, then we would be on a planet where the leadership is periodically forced by our cancerous policies into genocide with concurrent programs for thievery, mass sterilization, war, famine, and disease. In such a situation, if we didn't already have a devil, we would have to invent one. You saw the cross between the pillars from the Taino and the Mississippians, both American tribes. Here it is in Egypt, illustrating the strange moment we find ourselves in, that the co-creators who work as one traverse our solar system, wherein the moment of Psalm 89:14, mercy and truth are passing the face of the sun. It reminds me of another verse, Genesis 32:10. I am not worthy of all the mercy and all the truth thou hast showed unto thy servant, for with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become two bands. Now Orion must jump over the Milky Way. Now a blue star of the northwest has been seen in the southeast. Now a red star of the southeast must fly to the far north. It's or back to the far north, as it were, because it came out of the far north in February 2010. But it's a season of reversal that we've waited half a precession to see. Just as Yahweh said he becomes two bands wrapped around the sun, his children similarly took multiple paths to climb Mount Zion. Was one side wrong in how they did it? Read carefully the prophecies. It's his favorite children that get the rod worse than any on earth. So the prophecies run very hot and very cold about the same groups of people. Sometimes we get to be the king of the roost, and sometimes we get to be the sacrifice. Who was Ezra referring to when he said, "The country you now see governing the world will become a trackless desert laid waste for all to see"? I'll bet it was the same place John was calling a future habitation of devils, the hold of every foul spirit and cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Is it just me, or does that sound like a great home for the fallen? Candidates for FEMA indoctrination, readers of AOC's Red Book. Our future is not immediately about making America great again. No, we'll be the target of eagle priests and jaguar priests, Levites and Kenites, priests of Jerusalem and druids of the north, ritual murderers looking for someone to sacrifice. Contemplate there having been many notions of God's truth down here. Now there must be a huge re-education project as the first Messiah leads us out of this doomed land or erects a more humane civilization above the ruins. It will be like last time when Thoth, Horon, Enki, and Agadas made their way to the other side of the world and began civilization over in Egypt, Sumer, and India. Remember the story of the three wise men? It's many thousands of years old. It's about the counterbalancing of Orion belt stars and the stars of creation. Maya called them the hearth of creation. Since the gold coin was minted in 42 BC by the assassin of Julius Caesar, it probably has nothing to do with a manger. Nonetheless, it is part of a story of creation that we will see again in April, just before the fall. Other stories to review might be Dumuzi rising above the mountain between the last two pillars. Note the pillars capped with lions. Saturn Shamash playing son to the new king while Jupiter is seated. So it looks as if the hand of God gets promoted. And then again, the old Saturn king has his one-horned dragon son dressed up for sacrifice. The tree of life he felled will be a pyre for the altar, and Jupiter tied to the horns. Since his child Dionysus stands with Venus between us and the sun, I'm thinking there you've got a good explanation for the goats of Passover. That and perhaps why God is staring at his fork with laser vision. The three stars of creation are about to be three reasons for famine on earth. It looks like the shepherd who scorches this place will be given a new job shortly after Venus passes the heart of Aquarius. Harvester becomes the sower, rancher becomes a farmer. We have seen the stars of creation gathered together, so the plow of the gods is ready to do the job. I'm not sure from where in the Middle East came the Venusian tablet, though I'm convinced it's a time marker for us passing from dark to light. Notice that in this vision, only two pillars of creation account for all the action, just past the time of Thoth and now moving into our time with the serpent or lion king. It was regarding this point when it was said, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. Joel 2:31. Or he sent darkness and made it dark, and they rebelled not against his word. Psalm 105:28. This would place us with the arrival of Planet X from on high in early March. It was last seen coming in from high above the sun. Many of the old stones show a Phrygian cap or the sun with a tumor off to one side. And I'm thinking that's what they're talking about is the shadow cast by the system. Woe unto you that desire the day of the Lord. To what end is it for you? The day of the Lord is darkness, not light. Shall not the day of the Lord be darkness and not light, even very dark, and no brightness in it? Amos 5. There's a story of kings in ancient Egypt and the Celtic North we might get to see in real time. It was called the Hebsed Festival, the Tail Festival. After one had been pharaoh for 30 years, his grasp was seen as tentative. There would have to be a test, at least of his endurance, before he could continue. And in Egypt, the priests ran him through an obstacle course once every 3 or 4 years of his reign after the 30-year mark. In the Celtic North, the idea was that a legitimate reign would be one pentacle of Venus tracked by inferior conjunctions. And if the king survived the 8-year occasion, well, then his little son wouldn't without an atonement. And when they tell me Isaac or Ishmael ended up on an altar for parting the womb, I get it. Abe was an old king, so, he was going to have to do the ceremony. Anyway, the test had to do with a run. If God liked seeing Jupiter run around the blue star, then he said, I like my king. But if he didn't, it would be like ending the Olympics with a barbecue of all the winners and losers. And you wouldn't like that on the menu. A big fire would ensue from the west and the world would turn over. Jupiter, Venus, and North America blasted to smithereens by superflare. The thing about that day of the spring solstice, and no, I didn't recognize the name either, a really powerful light is coming out of Orion or Sirius, and you might not want to be out and about when it touches down. So you might ask, what's it like on the last day? Well, do you remember in the book of Job where it says, when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord and Satan came also among them? I think that day is almost here. And do you see Lamu and Lahamu, surrogates for Orion, I'm sure, ready to spin the pillars of creation so you can meet the keeper and not feel bad about where you're going? Yes, I think reversal is due, and we may not even notice the change in dimension when we go through the gate. Do you see he is standing on 4 steps? Those are the 4 rams of creation in time who come with the advent of a scorpion or eagle, a lion, a bull or shepherd, and an angel. The waves around the door of the equinox could be various angles of the Milky Way as we view the zodiac from different angles in this time. And will we be looking at Shamahutu or his son? The Bible says to wait for your shepherd, and I'm thinking that will be Orion for many of us. Kokopelli, the Pied Piper, luring us to the sun. But before you step out in the brightest sun ever, remember the righteous don't have to move as the wicked are swept away. In fact, Isaiah says, stay home and shut the door. The most fascinating piece I've seen in ages is this thing. Remember the mirror of the goddess that shows up in Pictish Scotland and in Syria? This one shows that when we get to the other side of the sun in a few weeks, what's waiting for us there is the power of a wasp scepter and a Jed combined. I used to work in the Air Force Weapons Lab, and I think roughly that would be like using 2 directed energy weapons in sync to blast a hole in our visiting Death Star. Like the flying saucers on stones from Ojuelos de Jalisco. Notice the sash covers the heart of the action. That could be Planet X or the second dark star with its trail of space rocks, the rod of God or beam of the eye headed from here to above the sun. From the sealed designs, you can see the very common two creators motif. In additions to Esther 1:4, it says, and the 2 dragons are I and Aman, which refers, I think, in the latter case to Amon-Ra, the giant chupacabra from Aries. The 2 dragons theme continues in the testament of Amram, which was written by the father of Moses. I saw watchers in my vision, the dream vision. 2 were fighting over me, holding a great contest over me. I asked them, who are you? And that you have power over me. They answered, we have been empowered and rule over all mankind. They said to me, which of us do you choose to rule you? I raised my eyes and looked. One of them was terrifying in his appearance, like a serpent, his cloak many-colored yet very dark. I replied to him, and this other watcher, who is he? He answered, this watcher's names are Belial, Prince of Darkness, King of Evil, and his every way is darkened, his every work darkened. He is empowered over all the dark. I would hate to think religion could have poured millions of us into the wrong pot. We are entering the belly of the beast, where we will see signs and wonders, and know our days are numbered. The big image is one of the dark ones. Looks remarkably like what the Mississippians expected, visible only through an infrared filter or a dark reflection like Perseus trying to see the Medusa. The shot was taken in the UK. Joel 2:31 says, "The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord." Amos 5 says, "The day of the Lord is darkness and not light. Shall not the day of the Lord be darkness?" Luke says in the Acts, "The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord." So when we arrive the Yakin and Boaz pillars at the house of God at the end of this month, I expect some darkness as we enter in. The Himyarite coins hints that between the final two pillars, we have our time of reversal, that it will begin at the time of Jacob's ladder and end at the time of the Vav and the eclipse, the sign of Jonas we've been talking about. And sometime before the eclipse at the end of April, expect fireworks near the first point of Aries. The first recorded king of righteousness, to my knowledge, was Melchizedek, though I suspect he was the second of the title. His predecessor was Seth, Set, or Shem, the one who founded Jerusalem and entered riding in on a donkey. One of them established the first Anuna altar there. This floor is what remains of the original. I believe they call it Temple Zero. The thing to notice is that, like so much ancient art, it's an illustration of the apocalypse. Aries and Bull of Heaven face toward and away from us during the coming roll. Early on, a visitor will come at us like a comet. Last time it flew around Triangulum and the Pleiades. I can't tell you what it might do this time. Watch for it near Orion. The rabbis said that's always trouble. Most significantly, our sun will be surrounded by two visitor stars of widely different sizes. One was associated with Orion, one with Aquarius. The ancients sometimes pictured life with those stars of creation as three spirals making three orbits, as at Newgrange, Ireland. They saw the visitors rotating around each other, balanced, though not symmetrically. The one associated with Orion was the god of chaos. If we regard the artwork of the Paleo-Indians of Missouri, they pictured him as an albino woolly rhinoceros or mammoth named Redhorn. We have similar designs of red horns or tusks on ancient synagogue floors, indicating that the Israelites and Babylonians saw him as a one-horned dragon of Monoceros Mushushu 6,000 years ago. In India, the god of the north was seen sometimes as a tusk for Ganesh. Notice he is wearing the crown of Baal, and his goddess has been slain 5 times. The mosaic floor is from a 4th century Byzantine church at Beit Shemesh. Originally, the area had been full of Canaanite sun worshippers of the goddess Anat, which would be Aleph, blue star in Nun, red star at the Tav, Aquarius, our present situation. Since you can see the raven and the phoenix with the owl of Aquarius nestled among greenery provided by the very storm god for whom they named nearby Jerusalem, you know that they were in the same ancient tradition we have seen around the world. The city was Anathoth, honoring their mother and their father. 1,000 years earlier than that old Christian church honoring the shepherd, something terrible had happened to Israel. By the time of Jeremiah, Yahweh's priests had taken to upbraiding anyone who breathed air. They had split with the Druids over trees and what to call the gods. They had split with the Sabians over one side of the Enki El Wars and the El Baal Wars. Now they said Israel was just a bunch of backsliders and Judah a place of treachery. So they split off the Mandeans, the Samaritans, the Nazarenes, the Ebionites, and the Essenes. Their prophecies made it sound like Yahweh doesn't plan to get the family back together until after the end times. Well, that won't be long. But perhaps for the tribe of Ephraim, us, about whom it was written, I will cast you out of my sight, even the whole seed of Ephraim, and I will send a sword after them till I have consumed them. Remember how he used those nasty Babylonians and Assyrians to inflict harsh lessons on us in the past? Well, think about Mr. Biden's current problem with Russia and China, and don't be surprised when things go sideways any day now. We are the sacrifice. So anyway, the people around Jerusalem were complaining to Jeremiah in chapter 44. When we burned incense and poured out drinks to Queen of Heaven, we had plenty of food. We were well, saw no evil. Since we stopped paying attention to her, we have had nothing but famine, war, and want. So Israelite religion had split again along doctrinal lines. This time it was all about patriarchy, and like their Greek brethren, they were going to get rid of any discussion of Asherah poles and girly stuff. They split with the Samaritans over their exclusiveness of temple operations. So the Jews had to go topple the other temple on Mount Gerizim in 110 BC. Hopefully, the Jews learned a little bit about karma when the Romans carted their temple off in 70 AD. They're just now asking for temple treasures to return from the Vatican. I was thrilled to see them discover an ancient Christian church floor with an Aquarian tree of life getting busy with a disguised Yahweh dad at the equinox. It's as if early Christianity understood what we've spent thousands of years forgetting. Seriously, we gave authority to a group of Italian bachelors whose concept of the perfect holy family performing creation and reproduction in the beginning was three guys, whereas Christianity had been a reform of Judaism. We had put back the idea of a sacred wedding and the divine feminine as part of the creation. And when Jesus said there are many rooms in God's mansion, I get it. Abraham was to have as many children as sand in the sea, and the Sanhedrin basically threw away as heretics as many people as there are people. They said they were doing it for Yahweh, and it was their own intolerance. Please act as if the power outages from hell between March and May are going to be a real thing. And then if you stock up now on extra food and water and nothing happens, you can eat some extra canned stuff for a while. And if the truck strikes and shortages continue or World War III begins, you can thank me. But by the way, the ancients thought there would be absolutely no future unless you indenture yourself again to the empire, as in Genesis 47. Babylon's priests and rabbis knew 120 years ago that apocalypse was coming. So they formed their nationalist organizations and issued their manifesto through their pet secular society, the Masons. And you were none the wiser. They told you the protocols were a fake. And now it will go down precisely as planned with bunkers and the market crash in World War III. And you and I are the sacrifice, the ones Zoroaster called the Saoshyants. Weeks ago, we heard about some of the military industrial complex posturing that goes on prior to massive global disintegrations of wealth. Military deployments are way up the scale of conflict escalation. And try to remember it's happening about the time the banks are poised to grab everybody's everything in a digital currency scheme to be applied just in time for the lights going out. How practical is that? And when might you access your wealth again? Ever? I would refer you to the charts of Deagle.com. If this nation loses 216 million people and 85% of its GDP as anticipated over the next 3 years, pray what, aside from apocalypse, was on the books to make that happen? And when might our government announce a sensible plan for saving our children in the coming triage of society? Well, I thank you, all of you, for listening to a deluded old guy and keeping the discussion real. I've been frankly amazed that people hung around here until pictures began showing up to confirm what ancient art, scripture, and myth have been telling us all along. As always, I would be pleased to be flat out wrong. I have a grandson getting married this summer. I would like to be there, and 40 days and nights of pole shift could definitely mess up the proceedings. Shem will bless you and keep you, now and forever. Take care.